turfgrass establishment can be established one of two ways. First of all, most people tend to lean towards seeding a lawn. They buy seed, hopefully they follow our cultivar recommendations. But another alternative, and often an alternative that people overlook because of cost, is sodding. But when you actually put pen to paper, you're going to find that sodding often is more economical than seeding and often more successful. Sodding is the operation where vegetative slabs of the desired turfgrass are cut where they've been grown at a farm, moved to a location where they're then put into place. The reason that it can be more economical in the long run is that often the sod comes in fully mature. That means you don't have to wait for that sod to establish. Often it's relatively weed-free, and because it already has a fairly mature root system on them, requires less moisture, less irrigation during the establishment phase. That's not to say, though, that sod doesn't come with some requirements for establishment. First and foremost is preparation of the soil underneath the sod where the sod is going to be laid. That soil must be what we call loose and friable. That is, you want pieces not larger than a pea, and you want it to be slightly moist but not saturated. If the soil is too dry and sod is laid on top of it, often what it'll do is suck moisture out of the sod and cause some sod establishment problems. One of the things we have is areas where it doesn't quite fit into that particular location. You can use a number of household tools, a knife, a razor knife, something like that, to cut that. There are also specialized tools, such as a sod knife, which work very well for you as you cut the sod and fit it into place. You want to cut this piece to fit exactly into that place as much as possible. Make sure you tuck in the corners where they tend to dry out in the wind and as we pull off moisture on this. So that's how we use these tools to fill in those spots, because most of our lawns are not perfectly square or rectangular. The other thing is what about irrigation during establishment? Unlike a seeded lawn, irrigation during establishment is still critical, but you're not going to be irrigating this location 3 to 4 times a day, especially if it's hot. You're going to irrigate this probably once. You don't want to overly saturate it. You just want to foster the growth of roots down into the subsurface soil. Finally, what are some other things you need to be aware of? You probably don't need weed control. Most of the time, sod farmers have done a good job of putting weed control on that sod prior to your location, and so you probably aren't going to need weed control. You want to make sure that you lay the sod edge to edge with no gaps, and you also can do what we call a herringbone pattern, much like laying bricks only on the horizontal, and that way you don't have seams meeting face to face. Sometimes it's a good idea to roll the sod after it's been established to push out any air packets, or tamp it with your foot in smaller areas. Sometimes people will buy sod from a number of different locations. You can have it delivered from a sod farm. Also, some of the garden stores will also carry it for your needs in smaller areas. So in summary, what can we say about sodding? Although some people are a little taken aback by the initial cost, I think we've shown that it actually can be economical. You end up with an instant lawn with no problems. Other advantages are it can be done pretty much any time of the year as long as the ground's not frozen. It does not require supplemental fertility and weed control during that first establishment phase, unlike seeded areas, and it does result in an instant lawn and the envy of your neighbors.